Conquering new lands and expanding your settlement in Sid Meier's Civilization series puts the player at the heart of a cultural struggle and an international relations simulation. The quest to compete for land, resources, and the right to be the dominant civilization makes this strategy game quite attractive for those interested in ruling their own empire. For the most part, the Civilization series does a good job of incorporating realistic mechanics for building and maintaining an empire. Mechanics relating to diplomatic relations, such as forming alliances against aggressive nations, incurring warmonger penalties for being too aggressive yourself, and advancing scientific study through joint research projects with other nations, give the player some level of understanding as to what goes on in the realm of international relations. But beyond competing with other nations for land resources, the game is comprised primarily of managing the internal affairs of your own civilization in order to see it grow and thrive. While Civilization boasts some relatively analogous mechanics to real life, it fails to properly account for a realistic model of how a civilization grows, or more specifically, at what point it collapses. In this video, we are going to take a look at what caused some previous civilizations to collapse, and where Sid Meier's game of the same name deviates from reality. To understand this concept, we first must look at contemporary anthropologist Jared Diamond's theory on the collapse of civilization. In his 2005 book, Collapse: How Societies Choose to Fail or Succeed, Diamond explores the causes behind the collapse of civilizations throughout history. This look into the factors that caused societies to fail in the past leads Diamond to identify 5 main factors that can lead to the destruction of a civilization: climate change, hostile neighbors, collapse of essential trading partners, environmental problems, and a failure to adapt to environmental issues. So it is clear that the survival of a civilization hinges on several different factors. Some of these factors are out of human control. If the Vandals decide they want to sack Rome, well, you better just hope that you're defensively prepared. But others are within human control, like managing and adapting to environmental issues, such as distribution of water, overhunting, and deforestation. In order to give us some perspective on how these factors contributed to societal collapse throughout history, let's look at a real-world example and see how it fits into Diamond's model. For this analysis, we're going to look at one of history's most infamous cases of domination, decline, and destruction: Rome. The Roman Empire lasted over 500 years, starting with the crowning of Emperor Augustus in 27 BCE, and ended with the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE. At its peak, the Roman Empire under Trajan, who ruled from 98 to 117 CE, who you actually have as your leader if you play as Rome in Civ 6, encompassed the entirety of the Mediterranean world and the majority of Europe, as far north as Britannia. Having control of the Mediterranean meant that Rome had tremendous power on the world stage. Goods could be brought in from Africa and sent all over Europe, and Roman goods could be sent across the entirety of Asia via the Silk Road. With this economic power, Rome was able to politically and militarily dominate the Mediterranean until the empire split into the Eastern and Western empires under Emperor Diocletian in 285 CE. This split marked the beginning of the end for the Roman Empire, as half of their empire was essentially now its own empire, known as the Byzantine Empire. From this point forward, the troubles plaguing Rome began to fall into categories outlined by Jared Diamond, signaling the collapse of the empire. The first of these issues falls under Diamond's category of hostile neighbors. While Rome was arguably the strongest military power in the world at the time, they faced near constant attacks from neighboring barbarian tribes like the Vandals and the Visigoths, starting in the 300s CE. In a one-on-one encounter, the Roman army would have these barbarians outmatched, but the constant attacks by multiple tribes wore down the soldiers and depleted their military resources. Many of the peoples from these tribes also migrated into Roman territory, settling on Roman land, which further depleted Roman resources, leading to an inability to adapt to environmental issues, another one of Diamond's categories for collapse. The final nails in the coffin for Rome were the rise of Christianity and the Byzantine Empire. With the legalization of Christianity in the Western Roman Empire in 313 CE, came a shift away from the divinity of the emperor and a strengthening of political powers of the pope. This shift complicated the ruling authority of the government, and forced the Western Empire to retreat into the shadow of its brother, the Byzantine Empire, in the east. In contrast to the Western Empire, the Byzantine Empire was growing in power throughout the Mediterranean. You would think these two empires would work together in order to share economic and military resources, but you'd be wrong. The inability to cooperate, along with the Byzantine Empire's domination of trade with eastern territories in Asia and Arabia, left the Western Empire in a pitiful economic state. And according to Diamond's model, loss of major trade partners is a symptom of a collapsing empire. Now that we've looked at an example from history, how does this model for collapse of a civilization play into the mechanics of the game Civilization? The example of the Roman Empire showed us that there comes a point where a civilization will grow too big to effectively manage its resources and govern its citizens, hence the split into two separate empires and the depletion of resources following barbarian attacks. In Sid Meier's Civilization, there is no inherent punishment for growing your civilization as big as you can make it. Issues like the inability to defend your civilization from attacks on multiple fronts, running out of natural resources, or losing income due to a loss of a trade partner do not really exist, or have little impact on the civilization's ability to continue growing. The game rewards continuous growth through the acquisition of resources of competing civilizations, and a civilization can still be effectively governed regardless of its size. For example, when you take over another civilization, capturing their capital and wiping them out from the game, you gain all the resources and territory of their empire, which bolsters your own empire a great deal more. Civ 6's Rise and Fall DLC adds some new mechanics to account for this issue. For example, the Great Ages allow for periodic Dark Ages, and the loyalty mechanics can lead to revolts in neglected cities. However, the core gameplay of Civ 6 rewards the player for constantly expanding their empire, and while player error can lead to the misallocation of resources, or barbarians can lead to an early defeat, the driving mechanic behind the Civilization series is unbridled expansion which, in a real-world setting, would have its limits and create an environment where collapse is inevitable. Hey, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. It was inspired by an article from Rock Paper Shotgun, which will be linked in the description below. Also, while you're down there, why not subscribe to this channel, and follow the link to my Twitch channel where I stream Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays at 7 PM PST.